The rotor wash of the Pave Hawk helicopter was a physical blow, a thrumming that vibrated deep in the bones and made conversation a shouted contest against the machine's fury. Inside its belly, Specialist Anna Vance felt impossibly small, a civilian analyst wedged between the granite shoulders of men who seemed carved from the Alaskan wilderness itself. They were Army Rangers, the elite, their faces etched with the confidence of 100 brutal training exercises. She was a logistics coordinator from a cubicle in Virginia, here to observe and report on supply chain efficiency in extreme cold weather environments. To them, she was a package, a piece of fragile cargo. Master Sergeant Rex Thorne made that perfectly clear. He was the team leader, a man whose neck was thicker than Anna's thigh, with a voice like rocks grinding together. "Keep an eye on the pencil pusher," he'd bark to a subordinate, a smirk playing on his lips. "Don't want her getting a chill and slowing us down." The other Rangers chuckled, the sound swallowed by the engines but the sentiment hanging in the frigid air. Anna simply adjusted the unfamiliar weight of the helmet on her head and stared out the gunner's window, her gaze fixed on the jagged white peaks of the Chugach Mountains. She didn't offer a retort. There was no point. Men like Thorne didn't listen to words. They only understood action, and her field of action was data points and spreadsheets, not ice axes and survival knives. General Marcus Thorne, the Master Sergeant's older brother, and the two-star overseeing the joint exercise, sat opposite her. He offered a tight, professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He saw what his brother saw, a potential liability. An academic in a warfighter's world. "First time this far north, Ms. Vance?" he asked, his voice a practiced baritone that cut through the noise. Anna met his gaze, her own expression calm and unreadable. "I've spent some time in cold environments, General," she replied, her voice measured. It was an understatement of such magnitude as to be a falsehood, but it was the only armor she had. The truth was not for them. Not yet. Outside, the sky was turning a bruised, ominous purple. Snow, which had been falling in lazy flakes, now drove at the window like a volley of icy pellets. The helicopter, so powerful moments before, began to shudder, bucking against an unseen force. A sudden, violent downdraft slammed the aircraft earthward, and the groaning protest of stressed metal filled the cabin. The lights flickered, then died, plunging them into a terrifying, strobe-lit chaos of emergency strobes. "What the hell was that?" Rex roared, his arrogance melting into the raw instinct of a cornered animal. The pilot's voice, strained and panicked, crackled over the internal comms. "Mayday, mayday! We're in a wideout! Going down, I can't see." The world became a symphony of destruction, a high-pitched scream of twisting metal, the shattering of plexiglass, and the final, concussive impact that threw Anna against her harness with the force of a battering ram. Then silence. A profound, ringing silence, broken only by the howling of the wind outside. The wreck of the Pave Hawk lay mangled in a deep snowdrift, a broken metal beast bleeding hydraulic fluid onto the pristine snow. The blizzard raged, a living entity of wind and ice that clawed at them, stealing breath and body heat with equal ferocity. The pilots were gone. The radio, a mangled mess of wires and shattered plastic, was useless. They were alive, 9 of them, including the general, but they were stranded, miles from any known landmark, in the heart of a storm the Weather Service would later call historic. Panic, cold and sharp, began to creep into the edges of the Rangers' disciplined minds. Rex Thorne, his face pale beneath a gash on his forehead, quickly reasserted control. "All right, listen up! We're not dying here. We push east. Follow the ridgeline down. Should hit the Matanuska River Valley in 10-12 hours. It was a plan born of bravado, a refusal to accept the reality of their situation. A young ranger, his teeth chattering uncontrollably, looked at the impenetrable wall of white outside. "Master Sergeant, we can't see 10 feet. We'll walk in circles." Rex whirled on him. "You got a better idea, Specialist? We stay here, we freeze. We move, we live. Now grab your gear." Anna, who had been methodically checking her own small pack and assessing the others for injuries, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but carried a strange weight in the ruined cabin. "He's right, Master Sergeant. Moving in these conditions will burn calories we can't replace. Our core temperatures will drop within the hour. We'll be lost and exhausted before we've gone a mile." Rex turned his glare on her, his contempt a palpable force. "And what do you suggest, analyst? We sit here and write a report on it?" The situational irony was lost on him. Anna ignored the jibe, her focus absolute. "We build a shelter. A Quincy. We can insulate ourselves from the wind and the worst of the cold, ride out the peak of the storm. It's our only logical chance." Rex let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. "A snow fort? We're United States Army Rangers, lady, not kids on a snow day. We don't hide." The men looked back and forth between the furious Master Sergeant and the calm, unassuming woman. They were trained to follow Thorne, but her logic was undeniable. The wind shrieked, as if to punctuate her point. It was General Thorne who broke the standoff. He had been watching Anna, noting her lack of panic, the methodical way she moved, the quiet confidence in her eyes. He saw something his brother, blinded by pride, could not. "Rex, stand down," the general commanded, his voice raw with authority. The Master Sergeant's jaw tightened, but he went silent. The general turned to Anna, his gaze intense. "You know how to build this, Quincy?" "Yes, General," Anna said simply. "I do," he nodded slowly, a decision solidifying in his weary mind. The lives of his men depended on this next choice. He could trust his brother's aggressive, failing bravado, or he could take a chance on this quiet, unknown woman. "All right, Ms. Vance," he said, the words sealing their fate. "You're in charge. Show us what to do." A flicker of triumph, quickly suppressed, passed through Anna's eyes. She had their attention. Now, she would have to earn their survival. Anna moved with an economy of motion that was mesmerizing. She directed the able-bodied men to shovel snow into a massive, tightly packed mound, at least 10 feet high and 15 feet in diameter. Rex Thorne worked with a sullen, resentful energy, slamming his collapsible shovel into the snow as if fighting an enemy. "Pack it down hard," Anna instructed, her voice never rising above the wind's howl. "The compression creates sintering between the snow crystals. It's what gives the structure its strength." She spoke of thermal conductivity and metamorphic processes in the snowpack with the ease of a university professor, a stark contrast to her simple, practical appearance. While the men piled snow, she gathered sticks, each about a foot long. When the mound was complete, she began pushing the sticks into it, all over the surface, until it resembled a giant, sleeping porcupine. Rex watched her, mystified. "What in the world is that for?" he grumbled. "Depth guides," she explained without looking at him. "When we hollow it out, we dig until we hit the end of a stick. It ensures the walls are uniform thickness, about 12 inches. Thick enough for insulation, thin enough to allow for slight oxygen perfusion." After letting the mound set for nearly 2 hours, a process she called age hardening, she directed them to begin tunneling into the side. It was grueling, claustrophobic work, but as they hollowed out the interior, a strange calm fell over the group. Inside the growing dome, the wind was gone, replaced by a profound, muffled silence. The temperature was still freezing, but it was a stable cold, no longer the life-stealing chill of the wind. They carved out sleeping platforms, higher than the floor, to stay above the cold air that would settle in the entrance pit. Anna then used a ski pole to poke a small ventilation hole in the roof. "Crucial," she stated. "Prevents carbon dioxide buildup." That night, as the blizzard reached its zenith, 9 people lay huddled inside a dome of snow. The temperature outside plummeted to 40 below with windchill, a lethal, unsurvivable cold. Inside the Quincy, body heat raised the ambient temperature to just below freezing. It wasn't comfortable, but it was life. The Rangers, men who had trusted their high-tech gear and aggressive tactics, lay in stunned silence, their survival owed entirely to the ancient, low-tech knowledge of a woman they had dismissed as a liability. General Thorne lay awake, watching Anna's silhouette as she periodically checked the ventilation hole. He had made the right call. His brother's methods would have killed them all by now. The storm lessened by morning, but the world remained a stark canvas of white and gray. Hunger was now a gnawing ache in their stomachs. Their emergency rations were meager, meant to supplement, not sustain. Rex, his pride still smarting, unslung his rifle. "I'll scout for game. A moose, caribou, anything." Anna shook her head before he could take a step. "They'll be hunkered down, just like we were. You'll waste energy and find nothing. There's food right here." She led them to a small, sheltered copse of birch and spruce the storm had missed, a place she seemed to find by instinct, by reading the subtle contours of the snowdrifts. She pointed to the bark of a birch tree. "The cambium, the inner layer, is edible. High in sugars and starches." With a small knife, she stripped a section and showed them the tender, pinkish layer beneath. It tasted faintly of wintergreen, and while not delicious, it was sustenance. The men watched, dumbfounded, as she then dug at the base of a frozen log, expertly flipping it to reveal a colony of dormant wood grubs. "Pure protein," she said, popping one into her mouth without ceremony. A few of the rangers flinched, but the general, following her lead, tried one himself. His expression was grim, but he nodded. "Better than starving." While the men gathered bark, Anna moved with a quiet, fluid grace through the trees. From her pack, she took a spool of what looked like dental floss. It was thin, high-tensile wire. With nimble fingers, she fashioned a series of small, intricate snares, placing them along what she identified as rabbit runs, invisible to any other eye. "We check these in a few hours," she said. Her confidence was not boastful. It was factual, a simple statement of what would be. The men were beginning to look at her differently. The initial mockery had been replaced by a grudging, fearful respect. She was not like them. Her skills were deeper, more elemental. The true test of her uncanny expertise came late that afternoon. A shadow fell over their small camp. A massive grizzly, disoriented and starved by the storm, had lumbered into their clearing. It stood on its hind legs, sniffing the air, its dark eyes ancient and intelligent. It was a monolith of muscle and fur, a creature of raw, untamable power. Instantly, the rangers' training kicked in. Rifles were raised, safeties clicked off. Rex took a step forward, his jaw set. "Nobody moves." "I'll take the shot." "No!" Anna's voice was sharp, a command that cut through the tension. She stepped in front of Rex's rifle, placing herself between the armed men and the confused beast. "Don't shoot. You'll only enrage it. It's not hunting us, it's investigating." Rex stared at her as if she were insane. "That's a 900-pound killing machine, Vance. Get out of the way." But Anna held her ground. She began to speak, not to the men, but to the bear. Her voice was a low, steady murmur, a calm, non-threatening hum. She slowly unzipped her parka, making herself larger, but she kept her hands open and visible. She took a slow, deliberate step to the side, away from their shelter and food supplies, creating an open path for the bear to leave. She never broke eye contact. The bear dropped to all fours, its head low, emitting a low huff. It watched her, its brain processing the strange, small creature that showed no fear, only a strange, calm respect. The standoff lasted for what felt like an eternity. The rangers held their breath, their fingers tense on their triggers. Then, with another soft woof, the great bear turned and ambled away, following the path Anna had offered, disappearing back into the white wilderness. A collective, shaky exhale went through the group. They stared, slack-jawed, at Anna, who was calmly zipping her parka back up. She had faced down one of the most dangerous predators on Earth with nothing but knowledge and courage. The last vestiges of Rex Thorne's authority crumbled into dust. The men no longer looked to him. They looked to her. The sky finally cleared on the third day, revealing a landscape of blinding white under a painfully bright sun. They were alive, but they were still lost. Worse, one of the rangers, a young man named Corporal Davis, had a compound fracture in his lower leg from the crash, now badly swollen and crudely splinted. He was feverish. They couldn't stay put, infection was setting in. But they couldn't move him far. Rescue flights were likely searching, but the search grid would be thousands of square miles. "We need to get to high ground," General Thorne said, his voice strained. "Signal a plane." Anna, using the general's binoculars, scanned the horizon. She pointed to a high, windswept ridge several miles away. "There. That's our best chance. Clear line of sight for miles." The path, however, was blocked by a massive, unavoidable obstacle, a glacier. It was a terrifying river of ice, a maze of deep, hidden crevasses and unstable snow bridges. Rex Thorne, now utterly subdued, shook his head. "No, ma'am. That's a death trap. Even with proper gear, which we don't have, we'll fall through before we get 100 yards. It's suicide." His assessment was technically correct, and the other men murmured in agreement. Fear was a cold knot in their chests. This was a challenge beyond even their elite training. This was where they would die. Anna looked at the faces of the men, saw their despair. The time for holding back was over. "My name is Anna Vance," she said, her voice clear and strong. "For 6 years, I was a SEER specialist for the Air Force. My specialty was Arctic operations. For the last 2 of those years, I wasn't just an instructor, I was the lead curriculum developer for the entire program. I spent 4 months living with and learning from Inuit elders in Nunavut. They taught me how to read the ice, how to listen to the snow." She reached into her pack and pulled out the small spool of wire and a few lightweight carabiners. It was all she had. "The surface snow on that glacier is unstable, but the old ice beneath it, the blue ice, is solid. We can cross it. We just have to move together, roped up as a single unit, distributing our weight." It was a plan of breathtaking audacity, a gamble based on a level of expertise they couldn't possibly comprehend. General Thorne looked from the terrifying glacier to the determined woman before him. He then looked at his brother, Rex, whose face was a mask of shame and disbelief. All of Rex's bluster, all of his ranger training, had led them to this dead end. This woman, this analyst he'd dismissed, was offering them their only thread of hope. The choice was clear. There was no more debate. "We're with you, Ms. Vance," the general said, his voice ringing with finality. He turned to the other men. "All of us. Rope up. Do exactly as she says." The process was slow and painstaking. Anna used the high-tensile wire and salvaged webbing from the helicopter seats to create a makeshift harness for each person. She tied them together, spacing them precisely. She placed herself at the lead, with the general directly behind her, and the strongest men flanking the injured Corporal Davis, who was supported between them. She held a long tent pole, using it to probe the snow in front of her with every single step. "Watch the color," she instructed, her voice calm and focused. "White snow is new and weak. Gray or bluish tints mean older, denser ice. Follow my exact footsteps. Do not deviate." They moved on to the glacier like a single, cautious organism. The scale of it was immense, a frozen, alien world of seracs and ice falls. The only sounds were the crunch of their boots, the whisper of the wind, and Anna's quiet, steady commands. They were halfway across when it happened. The snow bridge beneath the man directly in front of the injured corporal suddenly gave way with a sickening crack. With a terrified cry, he plunged into the darkness, his fall arrested with a violent jerk that pulled the entire line taut. The men cried out, scrabbling for purchase on the slippery ice as the weight of the fallen soldier threatened to drag them all into the blue-black abyss of the crevasse. Panic erupted. But Anna's voice cut through it like a blade. "Hold! Dig in! Anchor!" Her commands were not suggestions, they were absolute law. She had, with what seemed like impossible foresight, braced herself just moments before against a solid outcrop of blue ice, her body taking the brunt of the initial shock. The wire she had used, thin as it was, held firm. "Rex! Grip check!" she yelled, her voice never wavering. "General, secure Davis!" The slow-motion chaos resolved into focused action, driven by her will. With calm, precise instructions, she directed the men to act as a human pulley system. Pull! On! My! Count! 3, 2, 1. Pull! They strained, muscles screaming, their boots digging into the ice. Slowly, agonizingly, their comrade emerged from the darkness of the crevasse, gasping and covered in snow, but alive. They collapsed onto the ice, chests heaving, adrenaline coursing through them. They had looked into the maw of death, and she had pulled them back. There were no more questions. There was no more doubt. She was their salvation. An hour later they stood on the windswept summit of the ridge. The world spread out below them, a breathtaking panorama of white and blue. Anna took out a small signal mirror from her pack. She angled it towards the sun, flashing it in a deliberate, rhythmic pattern towards the horizon. For a long time, there was nothing. Then, a glint in the far distance. A speck. It grew larger, resolving into the unmistakable shape of a rescue helicopter, its rotors beating a rhythm of hope against the cold, clear air. They were saved. The whine of the rescue chopper's turbines was the most beautiful sound they had ever heard. As the medics rushed out, moving towards Corporal Davis, General Thorne walked over to Anna. He stood before her for a moment, his face etched with exhaustion and a profound, wordless awe. He placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Anna. There are no words. You saved every single one of us." He turned to the stunned rescue crew chief. "You see this woman? Memorize her face. She is the reason any of these men are coming home today." A short distance away, Rex Thorne approached. The arrogance was gone, stripped away by the raw power of the wilderness and the quiet competence of the woman he had belittled. He stood before Anna, his posture stiff, his eyes locked on the ground in front of her boots. "Ma'am," he began, the word catching in his throat. He cleared it and tried again, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "Ma'am. I was wrong. About everything. My training, my attitude. It was worthless out here. What you did. I've never seen anything like it." "Thank you." He was offering more than an apology. It was a total concession, a demolition of his entire worldview. Anna simply looked at him, her expression holding no triumph, no "I told you so." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The gesture was one of grace, of a forgiveness he hadn't earned, but she gave freely. It was never about being right. It was about coming home. As they boarded the helicopter, the other rangers, the men who had snickered at her, moved with a new deference. They cleared a path for her, offered her a water bottle, checked her gear. Their respect was silent, absolute, and more powerful than any medal. The official debriefing was held in a sterile, heated conference room back at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. It felt a world away from the life-and-death struggle on the glacier. General Thorne stood before a panel of grim-faced colonels and officials. He recounted the events without embellishment, his voice steady. "Let me be unequivocal," he concluded, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Anna, who sat quietly in the back. "Our training doctrines are flawed. Our equipment failed us. Our command structure, based on outdated assumptions of what a warrior looks like, almost got us all killed." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We were saved by the knowledge, courage, and leadership of one person, Specialist Anna Vance. Her actions were not merely commendable, they were heroic in the purest sense of the word. I am recommending her for the Presidential Citizen's Medal, the highest civilian honor this country can bestow." A murmur went through the room. The general wasn't finished. "Furthermore, effective immediately, I am commissioning a complete overhaul of the Joint Arctic Survival School. Its curriculum will be redesigned from the ground up. And its new director will be Ms. Vance." Standing at attention against the wall was Master Sergeant Rex Thorne. The general looked at his brother. "Master Sergeant, do you have anything to add?" Rex stepped forward, his back ramrod straight. "Yes, sir," he said, his voice clear and firm for the entire room to hear. "I concur completely. My own training was dangerously inadequate for the reality we faced. I was arrogant, and I was wrong. There is no one more qualified to teach us how to survive in that environment than Ms. Vance. I would be honored to be her first student. It was a moment of profound public humility, the beginning of a hard-won redemption. The system had not just been challenged, it had been broken and was now being rebuilt in the image of true competence. Months later, Anna Vance stood on a snow-covered training ground, not far from where the pave hawk had gone down. She was no longer the unassuming analyst in ill-fitting gear. She was dressed in practical, state-of-the-art Arctic clothing, her movements sure and confident. Before her stood a new class of special operators, Rangers, SEALs, PJs, their faces a mixture of curiosity and respect. The story of what happened on the glacier had become legend. She looked at them, her eyes holding the calm wisdom of the ice and the unshakable strength of a survivor who had earned her place not with words, but with action. The wilderness doesn't care about your rank, your reputation, or your pride, she began, her voice carrying easily on the crisp, cold air. It only respects knowledge and humility. Today, our lesson begins with humility.